the county of DeKalb County, the county in which I live in. We are here to get out the vote. This is the virtual kickoff. We're here to talk about everything that you need to know to vote in the 2020 election. And boy, what a lineup we have for you tonight. Now, I am just the host, and I won't be moderating, but I'm just here to kick us off and get us started. My name is Rhonda Briggins. I'm a member of the Decatur Alumni Chapter. I'm also the co-chair of the National Social Action Commission for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporation. And tonight we have a lineup. We're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. We're going to have an opportunity for you to just get all of the information that you need, because we all know November the 3rd is a very important date. And so we need to do all that we can in DeKalb County to make sure our folks get out and vote. But before we get started, we just showed you all a video that was produced in a partnership with Own Our Vote. Own Our Vote is coming out of the OWN network. It was a wonderful opportunity for our sorority to talk about our great history. This year is the history of the year of so many important dates. So I just want to really kind of give you a synopsis about that really quickly. This year is the celebration of the 19th Amendment, 100 years of women trying to get the right to vote. So this year is all about the right to vote. 100 years ago, women went out to get the right to vote. And why is that so significant to Delta Sigma Theta? It was the very first act for us as an organization, for us to come together and do this act around social action. We participated in the Women's Suffrage March, which then led to the right for women to have the right to vote. And so we have, as an organization, been on the front lines for 107 years. We talk about 100 years of our legacy in this place of advocacy. So voting for us is nothing new. We've been doing it for years to come, and I'm pretty sure we will do it for years more. Also, this is also the 55th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So 2020 marks a lot of important dates around the right to vote. So it is very imperative that you get out on November the 3rd and vote. But before we get started with our lineup tonight, we have a very special person to bring you greetings and to say hello to you. It is our Madam President for our chapter. And so, Sora Jackson, come on and give us a warm welcome and have everyone in DeKalb County know that you are our fearless leader in the Decatur Alumni Chapter.
Thank you so much, Sora Briggins. Don't you just love her spirit? We love her. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Today, as Deltas, it is incumbent upon us to honor the legacy of our founders and others who worked tirelessly to secure our right to vote by not only voting ourselves, but by working together to register others, educating our communities to mobilize voters, as well as to protect our voting rights. These words came from our national president and CEO, Beverly Evans Smith, and it's very appropriate that we use these words to highlight tonight's event, because that's what it's all about. On behalf of the more than 400 members of the Decatur Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, we want to welcome you to our virtual Get Out the Vote kickoff event. We all know that this upcoming election is critical, and this event will make sure that you are fully prepared for that. Thank you to everyone who joined us via Zoom as well as Facebook Live tonight. We welcome you. We also want to extend a special thank you to our host, Soror Rhonda Briggins, who is, as she's already stated, the co-chair of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated's National Social Action Commission, as well as our moderator, Mr. Frederick Hicks, who is the founder as well as president of Hicks Evaluation Group. I'd also like to recognize and thank all of our esteemed panelists for joining us this evening. A special thanks to our partners of the Delta Life Development Center, the Delta Research and Educational Foundation, as well as DeKalb NAACP, the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, Rose PAC, and the DeKalb County Voter Registration and Elections Office. Last but not least, we certainly do not want to leave out our award winning, amazing, on fire, fired up, just all up in your face telling you what you need to do social action committee. We love these ladies. They are working hard for you, our community, to make sure that we are all educated. So we want to certainly thank our social action committee. Thank you again. And I will now turn the mic back over to Rhonda Briggins. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam President. We love you and thank you for your great leadership and all that you do for Decatur Alumni Chapter. We certainly appreciate you. And I agree, our social action chapter and committee is just out of control with all of the work that they do. Miss Betty Davis, Waquita Brown, everything that Waquita and Betty does is just stellar, always going to be top notch. They had several rehearsals for this tonight. So they're going to make sure we get it right and we do it right. And it's at the toppest level of everything that you could do when you talk about putting a show on. So thank you all for your leadership, but more importantly, thank you for what you do in our community. You live social action and we appreciate you for that. Now, like I said, I'm just a host. I'm not the moderator, so I'm going to shut up and get out the way. But before I go, I need to introduce the moderator for tonight. Our moderator is Fred Hicks. Now, he's the only brother on the show tonight. But for many of you, if you are in Georgia and come into this political space, you should know Fred Hicks. Fred Hicks has ran many campaigns. He's always engaged in the political space. He's going to give us facts. He's going to pull great questions out of our panelists. He's going to ensure that before you leave tonight, you have all of the information that you need. Now, Fred comes from years of experience. He is a brother in the movement. And although you only brother here, Fred, you know that the ladies in the red and white love Fred Hicks. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Fred Hicks.
Dream I'm living a crimson and cream dream by doing this. So I'm so excited. Thank you, Ms. Betty, for the invitation. Thank you to the entire Social Action Committee for doing this and being out of control for all the right reasons and engaging and making sure our community, our county, and our state is much better. And thank you, Madam President, for all that you do and the leadership that you are providing. And to the entire viewing audience, thank you for tuning in, for caring about this, wherever you are, whether you're in DeKalb County, you're in Metro Atlanta, Georgia, anywhere across the world. The fact that you care enough about the democratic process, about democracy, to tune in tonight and be a part of this is very important, and it means everything to us. And of course, I'd like to thank the panelists for all agreeing to be here tonight, to serve on this panel and to dispense and share with the world your wisdom. Now, we only have 90 minutes to change the world, but if there's a group of ladies who can do it, it's the ladies of DST. So no pressure, y'all, but we have got to do good work tonight, and I'm excited to moderate this discussion. So thank you all for having me. So we're going to dive right in. With that being said, we're just a few weeks away from the actual election day, but the constant theme that you're going to hear tonight is that election day has already started. As soon as you are able to vote, whether that means that you have an absentee ballot or that you're waiting until early advance voting in person, as soon as you are able to vote, that is your voting day. November 3rd is just election day. It's the last day that you can cast your ballot, but it is not election day. So if you request an absentee ballot or the ability to vote by mail, and you've received that, your election day has already started, and you need to get it in to make sure that your vote is counted. And so to reinforce that, we have this fantastic panel, group of panelists here tonight who will talk about this. And we also have a fantastic group of people who are leading the charge of making sure that your vote is counted and that you encounter and overcome any obstacle to voting. So with that being said, I'm actually going to take a moment and make sure that each of you are familiar with your ballot and how you can check out your sample ballot. So you want to be educated and informed when you go to vote. So if you're here in Georgia, you can go to the Secretary of State's page. You can just Google My Voter Page, Georgia SOS, and you can enter your information and you will be able to pull up your sample ballot. So whether you're planning on voting by mail or you're planning on voting at a drop box or you're planning on voting at a polling location, you can review the ballot ahead of time, and we encourage you to do so. There's a lot of things on the ballot. Here in DeKalb County, we have an ethics issue on the ballot. And then statewide, you also have 2 amendments on there. And so when you go, you're able to, when you go to the My SOS page and you pull up your information, you can again, you can take a look at your actual ballot and see what it looks like. And so for people here in DeKalb County, I'm sharing my screen, and you can see here what the sample or provisional ballot looks like in DeKalb County. And I show this to you not just so that you're familiar with it, but one other thing that you're going to hear tonight is that we know the presidential candidates are on the ballot, but we are encouraging you throughout the night tonight to make sure that you don't stop at the top, but that you vote the entire ballot. So you have the president, you have 2 U.S. Senate races that are going to be on your ballot, not 1, but 2. That's important. One is featuring John Ossoff and David Perdue, and the other one is to fill the unexpired term of former Senator Johnny Isakson. So you will vote for both U.S. Senate seats. We also have a Public Service Commission seat. We also have, depending on where you live, you'll have one person or another who's on your who's running for Congress, and then you have your legislative seats, your state legislative seats. And then you get into your constitutional amendments, and then your county-specific question, your statewide referenda, and then your county-specific questions. There are a couple of things we wanted to talk about before we turn it over to the panel to make sure that you're absolutely clear. Number 1, every Georgia voter will vote in the U.S. Senate race. You have a partisan primary that took place in June with a runoff in August, but the general election is not partisan. So you will have the ability to vote for both U.S. senators in addition to the president. And it's important that you do that. And we'll talk about why throughout the night tonight. Also, if you are in the 5th Congressional District, the seat that John Lewis held, you will have an election on November 3rd. You just had an election on Tuesday, and that one will go into a runoff. We'll talk about that. It's a little complicated, but then you'll also have one on November 3rd. So even if you voted in the special election on Tuesday, you will, for one slate of candidates, that was for a special election. When you get your ballot or when you go to vote for November 3rd, you will again vote on the 5th Congressional seat, and that will have a different group of candidates. With that, the election on Tuesday was to fill the unexpired term of Congressman Lewis, and the election or the votes that you will cast, excuse me, in the November 3rd election will be for the new 2-year term. And the person who wins that November 3rd election will be the representative until 2022, at which time they will be up for election again. So the ballot might seem a little confusing, so we want to make sure that, and take a few moments before we go into the panel to just to look at this ballot, and so that you can understand the different races or different seats for which you will vote. So again, you will vote for president, but we don't want you to stop at the top, go all the way. So president, vote for your Senate seats, vote for the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission, they deal with the rates. So if you think that, if you have questions about your Georgia Power bill, or your cable or broadband internet access, that's the Public Service Commission. And then you will go to your statewide or your state legislative seats, so state senators, state representative, everyone will vote on that. And then you move into your local county races and the constitutional amendments, and then ballot questions. So again, don't stop at the top. If you are planning on voting in a week or 2, please go ahead and go to the My Voter page, pull down your sample ballot, research the questions that are on your ballot so that you are informed and you are able to make a solid decision. Every single vote matters, and everything on the ballot will definitely impact your life in one way or another. So please take the time to educate yourself and then educate others as well on the importance of each particular seat. With that being said, I'd like to just take a quick moment to introduce our panelists, and we'll start with Erica Hamilton. And so what I will do is we'll call your name, say who you are, where you work, what your office does, and then we'll slide into a few questions for each one of you. So Ms. Hamilton, we'll start with you. Unmute.
I'm Erica Hamilton. I'm the director of the DeKalb County Voter Registration and Elections Office. Our office is charged with administering the entire electoral process from registering a voter to vote to making sure your ballot is tabulated on when you cast your ballot from election day or early voting or during the absentee voting period. We're gearing up for what we're seeing as going to be a historic election. A lot of people have requested absentee ballots. The other day, it was 140,000 requests that we've received for an absentee ballot. So we're looking good for November. We're also looking forward to the advance in voting, in-person voting, which starts October 12th. And then Election Day. As Mr. Hicks said, it's a 3-part series. Whether you choose to vote by mail, vote in advance voting, or vote on Election Day, please participate in one of them. Also, just to help us out throughout the November election, we're doing drop boxes. So if you don't feel you don't want to put your ballot into the mailbox around the county, there's drop boxes. We have 13 advanced voting locations this year. And so we've added additional. They'll be open all 3 weeks from from October 12th through October 30th, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Saturday, 9 to 6, and on Sunday, 12 to 6. So our office is ready. And Monday, we'll host an event called Registered and Ready. So if you know somebody that needs to check their voter registration status, they need to register to vote, or they just want to check their polling place or get information on what to do once they're registered, please have them come out to our office. It's going to be a big event in our parking lot. So we're looking forward to people coming out, and that's from 9 to 6 p.m. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Monday.
A few questions for you to when we get back to you in just a second,
Okay.
but thank you for that great information. Next up, State Representative-elect Zuma Lopez. Again, who you are, what you do.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And really, it's going to be a packed night of learning. And we do have to get the message out and to get out the vote so that DeKalb County comes out strong during this election season. My name is Zulma Lopez, and I was fortunate to win the runoff election in August. So I am your state representative-elect, and I will be your state representative starting in January 2021 for District 86 in DeKalb County. I am excited to get the vote out of all of our communities and to get the message that we need to come out strong, not wait until November 3rd, but start now planning for how you're gonna vote during this election cycle.
Fantastic, and thank you very much. Next up is Ms. Inse Ufat, who is going to unmute.
Yeah, 7 months of this, you would think I have the hang of it. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nse Ufat. I'm the CEO of the New Georgia Project. And I'm really happy to be here with you. I feel like we're probably best known for our large scale voter registration drives, our year-round voter registration drives. But in our simplest terms, I think about NGP as a tech startup inside of a civil rights and a voting rights organization. And so, we believe that while Georgia is changing and the demographics are changing, and nowhere is that change more acute and more pronounced than in DeKalb County, that demographics don't actually equal destiny. And so we have an organizing culture and we bring creativity and technology to bringing about the DeKalb County, the Metro Atlanta, the Georgia that we want to live in. And I'm really happy to be here with you all.
Great, thank you. And she is a proud alum of Georgia Tech. I can't believe she didn't mention that, where you pledged your chapter there.
I did at Xi Alpha. I was initiated into our lovely sisterhood in spring of 2002 at the Xi Alpha chapter of Georgia Tech.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nse. Next up is the legendary Ms. Helen Butler.
Well, good evening, and Fred, I didn't know I was legendary, my guy. I am Helen Butler, Executive Director of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. This is an organization that was founded by the late Dr. Joseph Lowery and so many other civil rights leaders. And our primary purpose is to improve the quality of governance through our civic engagement activities. We do voter registration, education, mobilization, election protection, And we hold our elected officials accountable, but we also do some issue organizing around education, the environment, criminal justice reform, and economic empowerment. I am so honored to be a part of the Decatur chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. And I'm also a founding member of Zeta Psi chapter at the University of Georgia, one of the grade 8. And a lot of the grade 8 belong to Decatur alumni chapter. So I'm glad to be here as a part of this. And certainly we also work with Black Youth Vote, and glad to see someone else here from that as well. But we really are about getting people to participate because, as Fred said, public policy impacts all facets of our lives, and we're happy to be a part of this.
Fantastic, and thank you very much, Ms. Helen. She is humbled. I took just a point of personal privilege. I took a friend of mine a few years ago over to meet Ms. Butler. I didn't realize that she was one of the grade 8 at the time. And so I said, hey, my friend was pledged at UGA. I said, oh, hey, I want to introduce you. Come with me downtown and introduce you to a friend of mine, Ms. Helen Butler. And she was like, wait, the Helen Butler? I'm like, well, Helen, sure, yeah. She's like, oh my gosh, you don't understand. She couldn't even go into the room. She had to go to the bathroom, get herself together, make sure everything was just right before she could walk into the room to meet Ms. Butler, who I love and adore, but just the reverence and the excitement that she had that moment before she could even walk into Ms. Butler's office completely changed. I'm like, oh wow, I guess I need to take my shoes off when I walk in next time. So, thank you, Helen, for being here and being on this panel. We appreciate it. And then the legend herself, who's younger than all of us and making such a wonderful impact in the world, Miss Mary Pat Hector.
Thank you so much. My name is Mary Pat Hector. I serve as the Georgia Black Youth Vote State Coordinator under the leadership of the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda, as well as the National Coalition for Black Civic Participation. Black Youth Vote is an organization that works tirelessly to get young people to decide on election day to do more than just vote, right? We're gonna vote, we're gonna go to the polls, but we're also going to ensure that we're working with organizations to protect the election through election protection. We're also going to ensure that young people are signing up to become poll workers. And we are also going to ensure that our communities are getting counted in the 2020 census. So another cool thing about Black Youth Vote is we are nothing but young people, or it's nothing but young organizers. I'm sorry, Fred. Nothing but young organizers. So it's a youth-led organization, and I'm just very excited to be here today and talk about all of the amazing work young people of color are doing in the state of Georgia to get out the vote.
Thank you, Mary Pat, and thank you to all the panelists for being here tonight. And also thank you, Mary Pat, for providing the perfect segue to right before we get into the matter of voting, we need to talk for a moment about the census. As you know, 2020 is a census year, and there's been a lot of controversy around when exactly the census count is going to be completed. But we know that you have to be counted. So just today, the court ruled that the census will go on until October 31st. That does not mean that we need to wait until October 31st to make sure that we are counted, but that we do have a little bit more time. So a lot of the organizations that are represented here today will have a drive, and those who are watching in the audience will have a drive coming up in the next week or two to make sure that we're counted. Here in Georgia, we are last or second to last in the country in terms of census completion. And that has a serious impact in the political world. The census has everything to do with how your lines are drawn. So if you feel like you don't have good or solid, adequate representation in the legislature or at the county level or at the municipal level, then you need to complete your census. If you're concerned about the number of federal dollars that are flowing into your community, wherever your community is located, then you need to complete the census. If you are concerned about your legacy and your children and your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, being able to find out where you were and track their family history and their genealogy, then complete the census. As they say, it only takes about 10 minutes to complete it, and it's something that will impact your community for the next 10 years. So the census, I can't express how important it is. If you have completed your census, then you need to make sure that the other people in your community, in your neighborhood are counted. This is incumbent upon us. The information is completely private. It will not be used to determine any kind of benefits that you're receiving. It will not be used to track you in any sort of nefarious way. It is to be counted for. It is to make sure that your account and your community is represented on the official documents and on the official rolls. So again, please, please, please make sure that you're accounted. It's just as important as registering to vote and making sure that you vote. So you take the vote plus having your vote counted plus having your body counted equals power. It was power. I just made that up, but I think it sounded good. So we'll go with that part. But that being said, Ms. Hamilton, I will go to you first. So as the director for the elections office here in DeKalb County, a couple of things. What information should a voter take with them when they go to vote if they decide to vote in person?
They'll just need to take a government issued photo ID.
Does a
That's all
college
that's
ID?
required.
Does a
Some college
ID?
IDs, if it's a public institution, you can take it. If it's a private institution, it's not considered.
Okay. So what if you do not yet have a state ID? If you just turned 18, do you need to go get one? Is there some item they can use to as proof?
You can come by our office and we give out free IDs for the purpose of voting. So you just stop in. As long as you're registered, you can come in and we'll give you an ID, voter ID to be used on election day or when you choose to go cast your ballot.
How long does that take to happen or to take place?
Takes about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and you're in and out.
Wow. Okay. And can you do that the same day that you plan to vote?
Yes, you can go in and get it, and we'll give you a temporary. You can use it, and if you don't have it when you go to vote, just your poll worker will give you a provisional ballot. You can cast that provisional ballot, come into our office, get that free ID, give it to our receptionist up front, and your provisional ballot will count if all other information is correct.
Fantastic. Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned that you can vote, that people can vote early in person, and we know that November 3rd is the election day. Are there any other key dates that people need to have in mind, for say to return the absentee ballot or anything like that?
Sure. The first key date you'll need to keep in mind is Monday. Monday is the last day to register to vote in order to be eligible to vote in the November 3rd election. The next key date is the last day to request an absentee ballot or to vote in person is October 30th. After that, you have to have your ballot back into our office if you plan to bring it in or put it in one of our drop boxes. It has to be in by 7 p.m. on election day. If you choose to mail it, the federal judge ruled that it has to be postmarked by election day, but make it to our office no later than 7 p.m. on the Friday following the election.
Okay. So if someone decides to complete their ballot by, they request their ballot by mail and they complete it, they can drop it off?
They can drop it off at our
They
office.
can drop off at the drop box?
Correct. There's several places. You could drop it off at our office. You can drop it off at one of our advanced voting locations, or you can use one of our, right now, I think it's 20 drop boxes. We're adding some additional drop boxes throughout the county, but you can drop it off at a drop box, or you can put it in a good old fashioned USPS and have it delivered to us.
So what are some of the common mistakes you see in your office for people who vote by mail? Why could we hear about ballots being rejected, ballots not being counted? What are some of the reasons why? What are the most common mistakes that people make?
And we try not to say reject the ballot, because if there's a problem with your absentee ballot, we try to let you know so that you can remedy that so your ballot can be counted. But the most common error we see is people failing to sign the oath. Make sure you complete the back of the envelope, the oath envelope. That's what we're going to use to verify your signature, to make it sure it's you that cast the ballot. So that's the most common mistake we see. They fail to sign the oath. But if they do fail to sign the oath, we do send them a letter or we give them a call saying, we're going to send you an oath cure affidavit. Please fill this out and send it back to us. Your absentee ballot becomes a provisional ballot, and you have 3 days after the election to return that cure affidavit back to us.
So it sounds like if you're going to vote by mail, you don't want to wait until the 30th to get that ballot in, just in case there's something you need to do to remedy it.
Correct. You don't want to wait till election day. You want to get it in as early as possible. So when you get it, we ask that you, if you've made up your mind, to go ahead and fill it out and get it back to us in a timely manner. You're right. You don't want to wait till the last minute to cast that ballot.
And there's been a lot of talk lately in the national news about witness signature requirement. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, there was a lawsuit filed in South Carolina asking the court to require people who vote by mail to have someone sign a witness statement. Does Georgia have that kind of a rule? Is there anything like that that someone needs to have in mind if they're going to vote by mail?
No, Georgia doesn't have that rule. You do have to sign the back of your oath envelope, as I stated. We do have a verification process. Your signature has to match the signature on file. And if you do have someone to assist you in completing that ballot, they would need to complete the oath of assister on that oath envelope also.
So if we have a loved one who's elderly or they've had something like a stroke, they're not able to, they need assistance doing it, whoever helps them with that needs to sign it also?
Correct. They need to sign the oath of assister. So it's for those that cannot read or write, read the English language, or who have a physical disability.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much for that. Now, you mentioned drop boxes. For people for whom who've never used a drop box system before, how does that work?
The drop box is just like the old mailboxes. You drive up, and like I said, I wish I had a map. There's 20 of them across the county right now. You drive up, we put them where you can drive your car up, pull down the opener, drop your ballot in. It's under 24-hour surveillance. It's locked down to the building, and so nobody can drive away with it, and only certain people have keys to it that we clean it out every 24 hours just to make sure we're getting all ballots and they're secure. They're picked up in a secured manner. The person that picks it up is sworn in by our office to make sure that they're going to follow the rules properly.
Okay, and then you mentioned that you have to sign your ballot if you're going to drop it off like that, right?
Correct.
So my name is Frederick Hicks. Can I sign it Fred Hicks, or do I need to sign it Frederick Hicks?
As long as you're close. Now, if you just sign and it's a totally different looking signature, you'll get that cure affidavit. But if you're close to the signature, it's not, we try to get it as close, but we can look at it, and there's some interpretation. The election director, it goes through if it's, before it's rejected, it goes through a 3-panel check. The first signature verifier, the absentee ballot supervisor, and then the election supervisor before we say it's not a matching signature.
Okay, as if someone, they registered to vote a long time ago and they don't remember how they signed their original signature card. Maybe it was Frederick J. Hicks, maybe it was Fred Hicks, Frederick J. Hicks. Is there a place where they can go to find that information before they sign it?
We don't give out that information, but usually how you have it on your voter registration card is what we compare it to. Like I said, if there's a question about it, we will send you a cure affidavit, and however you sign that cure affidavit, plus provide the government issued ID that says that I am who I say I am, and your ballot will count.
Gotcha. Because, a lot of times people's signature will change over time. And again, if you have some major health issue like a stroke or something like that, then your signature will shift significantly.
Yes.
So again, just another reason to vote early, just in case there's an issue.
Correct. Correct.
Now, if you vote in person, do you have those same kinds of requirements to sign a card or anything like that?
When you come in person, you have to complete an absentee, the application to vote in person. So it's the oath affidavit as well as an absentee ballot application. People always say, I'm not voting by absentee. It means that you're absent away from the polls on election day. So there's no signature requirement. You bring in your government issued ID. It just happens like you do on election day. You have that voter certificate plus the oath of elector, show your government issued ID, and you're allowed to cast your ballot on the ICX machine, on the voting equipment.
Fantastic. I have a series of questions for Ms. Lopez next, but I actually want to transition, but I want to keep you on. You mentioned signatures. I know that in the Latino and the Asian community, the exact match policy has created a little bit of an issue. Ms. Lopez, if you'll talk about that for a moment, and then, or sorry, Representative-elect Lopez, and then Ms. Hamilton, if we can have a discussion about that, if there's kind of things that you've seen during the work that you do, and any specific examples.
Sure. Particularly when we, in immigrant communities, we tend to use both last names from mom and dad. Perhaps we also have a middle name, and that creates issues when you're trying to compare that full name with the information that you have. When you try to compare that with, for example, the DMV or the information that you have in the voting records, because your name can also change. And so I highly recommend, and we're getting these out to our communities as well, to make sure that they confirm their registration, and to do it now so that they have time to make any amendments, make any corrections. Because, for example, if you have your driver's license while you are a lawful permanent resident, for example, and then you become a US citizen, that can become an issue because you can change your name while you're doing your citizenship. So those changes can impact whether you are still going to be allowed to be, so your name is still registered. So anyone that has a name that's hyphenated, that has any marks on their last names, that have multiple last names, should definitely make sure that they go online and confirm that they are still registered and that their names are correct. And I did, Erica mentioned the signature, which is, I'm also curious about that. And perhaps we can ask her. She's here, and then she's our expert. Because when you vote by absentee, I'm curious to know whether it would be advisable for someone to also include a copy of their ID when you're sending out your absentee ballot, so that you can confirm that your signature is actually your signature, or your newly or slightly changed signature from the one that you originally put on your when you registered to vote. Because that's another thing that definitely can change over time. So the exact match, just a short history of that. Obviously, that was tried to put in place. Several lawsuits were filed, and because it really impacted disproportionately communities of color in their ability to vote, and also the factor of intimidation and the fear of making a mistake, doing anything wrong. So that really impacted our communities. And it is still in place for in some instances when there's that discrepancy in their last name. So short answer is, please make sure that you confirm that your names is correct. And so that way you don't have, or you try to avoid any surprises the day of. That's kind of my background on the ethics match or exact match. Check your registration, make sure that it correlates with your proof of identity that you can show if needed to confirm that you are who you are.
Fantastic. Erica, any thoughts about that? Any additional advice you could give? I think one of the questions that Representative Lopez posed was, if you've had a name change or you have any kind of sort of like dots or anything like that over your name that can make it put you at risk of your ballot being rejected, should you include a copy of your ID? Does that help?
You're only required to use a copy of your ID if you're a first-time registrant by mail and then you didn't provide it when you registered to vote with your absentee ballot. And so we don't open up the absentee ballot. So if you put it in with it, we only can open up absentee ballots so far before the election. And so putting it in there with your ballot would not help, because by law, we can only open up ballots. And we're going to start hopefully October 6th, 19th, opening the envelopes and preparing them to be scanned in our scanners. So once we do that, we separate everything out, because you don't want to be able to see how somebody voted. So we wouldn't see that information if you put it in with your ballot. Anything that you want to send additionally to help us will need to be outside of your ballot, because we don't get the information in your ballot. But again, if your information is incorrect, we're just going to send you a cure affidavit, because we want to give you every opportunity to make your vote count. And if we do happen for some reason have to reject your ballot, then we will let you know, so that if it's during the advanced voting period, or if it's on before election day, we'll let you know so that you can go cast the ballot. With the exact match, that's just, it's Georgia rule that it goes through the DDS verification and the citizenship verification, but you're put in pending status, and you'll be required to provide additional information. And you can even provide that information on election day so that your vote will count. And if you don't provide that information by election day, then your ballot, you can vote a provisional ballot, and you have 3 days after the election to provide that additional information so that you can go forward and your ballot can be counted.
So is there anything that a person who's concerned their ballot might be rejected, is there anything they can do on the front end to improve the chances of it being accepted?
If
Particularly,
they want to go on, and you mentioned it earlier, mvp.sos.ga.gov to know how they are registered to vote, that would help on the front end so that when you get to the polls, or when you get to your complete your ballot, you'll have all the necessary information you need, the information that we have on file in our office, as well as what we put in the statewide voter registration system.
no, fantastic. Representative Lopez, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But,
No, that really answered my question. That's great to know that. Of course, we don't want to give out information that is going to, make your job more difficult. But so I guess the short answer is definitely just check your information on on the webpage to make sure that your information is correct. So that's I'll definitely spread out that information as well.
okay, and Representative Lopez, what issues have you encountered when assisting people with limited proficiency? What are some of the obstacles that people who have limited English proficiency that they encounter when trying to vote?
That is a great question. I'm also an immigration attorney. That's what I do. That's my day job. And just today, I assisted a young female in getting her citizenship, and she came with me to do her citizenship test and an interview. And she's been here for forever. She speaks English, but she was so nervous that at one point I thought, oh my God, she's going to fail because she was so nervous. And so newly naturalized citizens, or even immigrants that have been here for a long time, feel intimidated by any process that has to do with a government, and including voting. In some of our cultures, they don't have, or they haven't been civically engaged, and so we have to inform them, educate them that this is the right, that is exciting, that we need their voices. So part of it is incumbent upon us to spread out the information in our native language. I'm proud to be part of the Latinos for Biden and Harris, and we are sending this information in Spanish via various ways to our communities. And I know that other organizations, Asian Pacifics and other organizations, are also sending this information in different languages. So that's part of, I guess, the piece of the puzzle to get that information out. But also, it's important for the community and non-English speakers to know that they can bring a translator if they choose to on election, if they choose to vote in person, right? So they, of course, that person cannot be a candidate or a family member of a candidate, I believe an employer or a union officer. They cannot serve as translators, but otherwise, it is the law that they can bring a translator to the polls to help them and assist them in casting their ballot. So that's also important for important information to spread out. I know that here in DeKalb County, we want everyone to vote. We want to get that number, the best number that we can get. And I've been working within my district to have yard signs in different languages, particularly around the Clarkston area, around Memorial Drive, to make sure that every community feels that they are part of this process and that they shouldn't be afraid. Quite, the contrary, that we need them and we need their voices in this very important election.
Fantastic. And Ms. Hamilton, is there anything that someone needs to do if they want to take a translator in with them? Do they need to register online somewhere? Do they just need to notify the poll manager when they get there? Well, what happens? What's that process like?
When they get there, they'll need to complete the oath of assistance, stating that the person is unable to read or write the English language, and they're just making sure they fill out that oath, and then they're able to assist that voter.
All right. Fantastic, fantastic. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so this is actually a good segue over to the work that the New Georgia Project does. The New Georgia Project, as Ms. Ufat mentioned, is actively engaged on the front lines of voter registration, voter protection, and voter empowerment. And as a matter of fact, I believe you were in court on Monday dealing with a challenge to votes. Can you talk to us about that and say what that was about and the arguments?
Yeah, I absolutely can. One, they're not playing games. Georgia's changing very rapidly, right? Almost 2 million people have moved here in the past decade. Over 80% of them are people of color. Georgia's going to be the first state in the Deep South with a white minority. It was going to be 5 years ago. Now it's looking like 4. People keep having babies and people keep moving here. Now I tell people that Atlanta is full, they should check out Charlotte, but nobody listens to me. And so what that has meant is not only has it led to the political opportunities that we see in this moment. My dog is agreeing, forgive me for my amen corner. But not, so what that means is that lots of people are moving here, lots of people are getting registered, and there are lots of people participating in our state's elections. What it also means is that organizations like the New Georgia Project and Black Youth Vote and the People's Agenda are registering people, but also people are getting registered at the DMV. People are getting registered at federal agencies. And the scope, the scale, the size, the breadth of the work that we are doing has now exposed a lot of the ways in which votes were suppressed, right? And so the scope, the scale, the size of the work that we're doing has led us to starting to identify all of the areas that used to be, or the tactics that were used to cut 5 people off the rolls, cut 100 people off the rolls, cut 1,000 people off the voter rolls to impact local elections. So what we found out was that 2 citizens in Fulton County challenged Fulton County, said that they had reason to believe that there were 14,000 voters who were improperly on the voter rolls in Fulton County. And they demanded that Fulton County do a challenge, that they allow them to challenge their residency. And it's so close to the election. Fulton County obviously said no. Now let's be clear. Folks know about the New Georgia Project and what we do. And there are times where we sit on separate sides of the table when it comes to how elections are managed, how the right to vote is protected, et cetera. This time we intervened on behalf of Fulton County, or on their side, if you will, to say, 1, that it's too close to the election to do these voter challenges. And 2, this is a backdoor attempt to purge 14,000 voters from Fulton County's voter rolls, because now what they were proposing was that with 35 days left to the election, that they were going to mail something to 14,000 voters in Fulton County. And then those people needed to reply. They have to overcome, like, the burden of proof is on them to verify that they actually live in Fulton County and are eligible voters. And it's ridiculous. And so the judge dismissed the case, and those 14,000 voters are safe for now. But it's but one example of all of the games that get played in order to make it difficult for us to have full, robust elections where everybody can participate and every vote gets counted. And that is why we have to remain eternally vigilant to make sure that they aren't able to slide through these backdoor attempts. We learned about it on Friday. We intervened on Sunday, and the hearing was Monday morning at 10 a.m. And the case was dismissed by lunch. But what is it they say in our community? If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And we stayed ready.
Absolutely. Great. So and let me just take a moment to say that for all of you out there in our viewing audience, if you have a question, just drop it in the Q&A section there because we're throwing out a lot of terms. We're going to follow up on those. But if you have a question about anything that you've heard or just something you've been dying to ask, please just drop it in the Q&A box and we'll make sure we get to it and we'll address it either directly or we will incorporate it into one of the questions for the panelists or some of the questions for the panelists. So, Ms. Ufad, you just mentioned that two people, I'm fascinated by this, that two people were able to challenge 14,000 votes. Is that right? Gosh, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
But those votes are safe now. Those voters are safe. They'll be able to vote in this election.
For now, yes.
For now.
I mean, and we're really proud of it. I mean, again, we don't try to spend our time in courts litigating the right to vote. From where I stand and from where many of us stand, the right to vote is inalienable, and it is sort of protected by the Constitution, and it's one of the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. But unfortunately, people play games with that, and oftentimes it is conservatives who pretend to be strict constitutionalists, unless it comes to the right to vote for people of color, for low wealth folks, for women, and femmes. So a lot of what we do is sort of fighting in the court of public opinion, trying to change the narrative about what's possible in the South and change the narrative about what's possible in Georgia. And we are ultimately community organizers, right? Boots on the ground. But from time to time, we have to square up in the actual court, and we win.
So, and speaking of that, so you mentioned how you all advocate for to protect the rights to vote, to protect the right to vote. What are some of the common mistakes that you see that people make that make your work a little bit harder? So we're not talking about the people who challenge and try to strip away the right to vote, but what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen when people feel like their vote is being taken away and it's something that they could have done on their part or our part to ensure or protect our vote?
I mean, I don't know if I accept the premise of your question. The thing that prevents people from voting oftentimes are not common mistakes that they make. It's oftentimes election officials and other individuals who construct hurdles that prevent people from having free and fair and unfettered access to the ballot.
Absolutely. Okay, fantastic. And so you mentioned, you've talked a little bit about your work. Do you all have any upcoming events? I know that Monday is the last day, as Ms. Hamilton mentioned, the last day to register to vote. Does NGP have any major events coming up between now and Monday? Do you have anything going on between Monday and the election day to help people be informed, to be up on the ballot, to go vote early? Anything like that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we do this work year round. 365, registering people to vote. We've built a network of about 2,000 churches and synagogues across the state who we work in deep community with and deep partnership with. We have, we're going to high schools and doing virtual assemblies for the 18-year-olds so that they can register to vote. I mean, ultimately, we want to change the culture of voting and change the culture of civic engagement. We gave away 50 pairs of the hottest sneaker to drop this year, the Air Jordans, on National Voter Registration Day, and it helped us register 9,000 people, 9,000 young people to vote. So what I say is that we have tons of virtual events that you should follow us on all of our social media. You should download the New Georgia Project app. It's in the Apple Store and the Google Play stores. It's in, for all intents and purposes, an SOS button. So if you find yourself and you've been told that you've been purged from the voter rolls and there's no election protection volunteer there, and for some reason a person doesn't have access to 866 Our Vote, which is the election protection hotline that we use, that they can also make a complaint, try to get some resources. If we need to deploy attorneys, if we need to deploy the media, if we need to deploy the county election workers, that people should download the app because it'll be there. And yeah, there are tons of events. They're on our website. Also, you can go to mobilize.com/New Georgia Project, which is where all of our volunteer opportunities are as well. We have offices in 7 cities around the state of Georgia. So if you're, you have people in Valdosta and Macon and Albany. Like this is legitimately an all hands on deck moment. And so we're doing what we can to create on-ramps for people to participate in our elections, but also participate in sort of building a better Georgia.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned building a better Georgia, and you mentioned you have a number of events on your website. One of the things that people need to know how to do is how to make a voting plan. So if you can just kind of go over that. If someone says, hey, I have a new voter, or this is my first time voting, I see what's happening in the world and I want to get out there and vote, what are some of the things they can do to make their plan to vote?
I love this question. Because it is supported by tons and tons and tons of research. There's tons of data that if you walk a voter through like what their plan to vote is, that it becomes real in people's minds. So everyone has the intention of voting, right? Procrastination is a disease that many of us are dealing with in our day-to-day lives. And so people have every intention to vote, like, yeah, I'm gonna vote, but are you gonna vote early? Are you going to vote by mail? Are you going to vote on election day? What time are you going to vote before work? Are you going to vote on your lunch break? Are you going to vote after work? Do you have children? Is someone responsible for childcare? Do you have professional, community, personal obligations that are going to get in the way? Giving people an opportunity to think through what is going on in their life so that it helps make a plan and they can stick to it. We've seen like a double-digit increase in turnout from low propensity. And these are just voters that are infrequent voters. These are not folks on this call, because people on this call clearly vote in every election. But for infrequent voters, just having someone say like, all right, well, if you're gonna vote by mail, have you requested your absentee ballot yet? Well, it's 5 days before the deadline. I would encourage you to mask up and go vote in person. Do you know where your early voting location is? And so really, it's just walking people through a logical set of questions that help them solidify in their own minds what they have going on and choosing a time that's most convenient for them when to vote. Again, I love that question. I love it as a strategy, as an organizer, and I love the fact that the data supports that it works.
Absolutely. So People's Agenda, NGP, any organization, MAPAT, any of your organizations out here, I would encourage you, if you don't have a link or a basic template or toolkit on your website that people can use or that you've distributed, based on your comments there, Ms. Ufa, that this so it's evidence-based, that it increases turnout, that you would do that or link to it and make it available for people, and so that they can do it around the table. I know that I have 2 for whom they will be voting for the first time in the presidential election this year. And so we're really excited about it. It's a big topic of conversation. And so this is something I would like to share with them. But I think based on those comments would be very, very helpful. And also for our Social Action Committee, since this is a nonpartisan conversation and this is just showing people how to vote, I think it'll be a very fantastic thing. I know we have the NAACP in the audience. And so also saying to our friends over there that just as it sounds like as many groups and individuals can get involved with showing people, helping people create a plan to vote, the better, and we will actually increase our turnout. That being said, I'm going to go to Ms. Butler in just a moment, but several years ago in 2008, I was working diligently in Tallahassee and Leon County, Florida, and for the general election in 2008, we actually had 96% voter turnout, which I thought was pretty amazing. But we were only the 4th highest county in the country, but we had 96% voter turnout. And so I would love to see DeKalb County get to those numbers. I would love to see that happen across the metro area. And it sounds like helping people develop a voting plan is a key way of doing that. And there are a few key questions around that. So do you know where your voting location is? When do you plan on voting? Do you plan on, and when do you plan on voting? And how? Are you voting by mail? Are you going to do it at the drop box? Are you going to do it in person? Are you going to wait until election day? No, you're not going to wait until election day. So that is the only answer for that. No, you're not going to wait until October 30th to return your ballot by mail. No, you're not going to drag your feet on getting it done. You're going to do it as soon as you can. But that being said, so let's sort of a call for what we want to do after this. Let's make sure we help individuals with that. Anything else, Ms. Ufad, about NGP or the projects that you guys are working on, or things that people can do to protect their vote? I agree. Thank you.
Check your registration status. Like, every now and then, go to MVP. I think it's helpful. I think, Ms. Butler can attest to this. The reason that I know that double voting and voter fraud is not real, because we spent all year trying to get people to vote once. So the idea that people are going to vote 2 or 3 times is just absolutely ridiculous. But there's nothing more demoralizing than getting up, getting dressed, showering, saying hi to your neighbors, showing up to the polling location on election day and finding out that you are not on the voter rolls, and then trying to scramble and explain and understand what's going on. So, you can do a simple thing like check your status. We've attempted to do some like cheeky know your status type stuff, and it hasn't always worked. But like, listen, there's an opportunity. You can go to the My Voter page and check to make sure that you're on the voter rolls and that your information is correct. I feel like that's one of the number one things that like anyone can do in advance of this election.
So one more question for you, and this is from the audience. They asked, do you all do work in the rural parts of Georgia? And so I was thinking about when I think it was in 2018 when they tried to close the polls down there in Lumpkin, a lot of your work. So you're not just an Atlanta or Metro Atlanta organization, right?
No, like I said, we have offices in 7 cities across the state, and we absolutely work in rural. In fact, if you were to ask anyone on our team, they will tell you that there is a universe of voters that are our highest priority for engagement this year. And it's about 90,000 Black voters who live in what is known as Georgia's rural Black belt. So imagine if the state of Georgia was wearing a prom queen sash, and it sort of went from Augusta all the way down to Albany. And so there are about 90,000 Black voters who were on the voter rolls, but did not vote in 16, but they showed up to vote in 18, and we want to keep that party going. And so, yes, we absolutely work all over. Thank you, computer. We absolutely work all over the state of Georgia.
Thank you. And you mentioned people who did not vote in 2016, but voted in 2018. This is a great segue to Ms. Butler and your presentation. Helen Butler, you're with the Coalition for the People's Agenda. It was convened by the late, now sadly late, Reverend Dr. Joseph Lowry. But tell us a little bit about your work and tell us about what you all have found with respect to turnout, especially in the Black community.
Well, what I found, and of course, working on voting for some 20-odd years in Georgia, the state of Georgia, as it's been said, it's really critical that everyone show up to vote. So I have a couple of numbers just to try to bring home how important it is and how we could make a difference. Basically, I think you have what we see and what we saw in June, despite COVID, a lot of people showed up to vote, and it made a difference in the outcomes of a lot of races in terms of who got to go to what I call the championship game. The championship is November. The playoff was the primary. So it really showed a lot that numbers do matter. We had a lot of people that actually stood in lines despite all of the rain, despite polling locations being consolidated because of COVID, despite some of the machines not working, despite some of the polling locations not opening on time, but numbers did matter. of course, the June 9th primary showed we had 2 million, almost 2.2 million voters cast their ballots in the primary. And it shows how they were split out. For the first time, it was one of the most, I guess you would say, the highest turnout we've had in a primary. And it means that we have to keep up that number if we want to make the changes that we want to have. We have over 7 million registered voters. And since this is Delta Sigma Theta, a lot of Black women, females, we make up 53.2% of all registered voters. So guess what? We can change any race that we want, ladies. We just have to make our commitment to do that. And I'm not saying every person needs to be changed that's in office, but we have that opportunity. If we want to do that, we have the power to do so. Blacks make up 30% of all registered voters in the state of Georgia. So you can see Black females are about 16% of the registered voters, and Black males are 13%, but altogether we're 30% of the total registered voters. And of course, we talked about what's on the ballot for November, critical positions that we are going to select. Not and everybody knows the presidential. I don't say everything is local, what we want to happen. A lot of things happen because of local races, and you've highlighted that, Fred. 2 United States senators. We have 14 congressional representatives. We have 2 public service commissioners. We have 56 state senators throughout the state that will be elected. 180 state representatives. 40 district attorneys, young people talking about criminal justice reform. Well, district attorneys, sheriffs, they all make a difference. So we want to look at those races. But next, if you'll go to the next slide. Looking at history, and we talked about history, Fred, about the turnout percentages. In 2016, Blacks had the highest turnout percent in the state of all other demographics that we had. It equaled what the total state turnout rate was, 62%. But what is more critical than that is if you look at who was registered to vote, but who didn't vote. In 2016, you had over 800,000 Black people alone who were registered to vote, but didn't make that step to actually vote. Similarly, in 2018, 976,000 people, Black people alone, were registered to vote, but didn't show up to vote. So those numbers could have changed the outcome of any race. And as a part of, we like to look at what is the young people's participation rate. I don't know if you can see it, but basically young people, we had about 18 to 35-year-olds. You were 800,000 of those that didn't show up to vote. So it's really shows you how the numbers can impact the outcome of any election cycle. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So numbers matter, right? For 2018, for the gubernatorial race, Stacey Abrams, and I'm giving facts, lost by 54,000 votes. But look at the number of Black people alone who didn't vote. And I'm just showing you this for graphic purposes, for informational purpose. By the same token, look at every other race, statewide race, all of our constitutional officers. And I didn't show the Secretary of State because that ended up in a runoff. So I'm using apples to apples. But if you look at all of these races were won by 100,000 votes, And of course, the agricultural commissioner was by 200,000 vote. But if you look at Black people again, young people at 800,000, any of those races could have been changed by people exercising their right to vote. So numbers do matter. We have the power. If you'll go to the next slide, I like to look at Black women, how we fare, right? I convened the Black Women's Roundtable as an initiative of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. So Black women, how do we fare? And if you look at Black women, the number of registered voters in Georgia, I looked at where Black women make up the majority registered voters in 27 of the 159 counties. We are the absolute majority registered voters. So we have power. DeKalb happens to be one of those counties where Black women are the majority registered voters. So we could make a difference. And I'm not even looking at other demographics like the other people of color, like the Latino community, like the Asian Americans, like the Native Americans. This is Black people alone that are registered and how we have power. And God, was I surprised, Black men are the majority registered voters in Tallahassee County. Man, just think about the power that that means that you can have as we participate in this process. Next slide, please. So guess what? A lot of people have looked at, you know, where is there opportunity for making a difference in changing dynamics? There are about 16 competitive House districts, right? And in those 16 competitive House districts, they are comprised, 29 counties make up those House districts. Well, if you look at it, ladies, in 12 of those 29 counties of the competitive districts, Black women are the majority registered voters. So what does that say? You can exercise your right to vote and make a difference in your communities if you just show up to vote and not let someone else take your power from you, because when you don't vote, you give your power away to someone else to make that decision for you. So you can, I believe that's my last slide, Fred. So you can make the difference by exercising that right to vote.
Great, thank you for that. And that actually leads to a good segue to Mary Pat. So the question I'm going to put before you is particularly looking at that slide that Ms. Helen presented, 816,000 people in the 18 to 34 age range, but I'm just slightly outside of that, did not vote. Why? And what can be done to motivate them? And what is your organization, Black Youth Vote? How do you seek to reduce that number?
Absolutely. So over the course of the last few months, we've really been organizing specifically outside. I know that sounds bad. Mrs. Butler has actually been getting on us, making sure that we were wearing our mask and practicing social distancing. But over the course of the past few months, we've actually been outside with those young people at a lot of the protests and rallies, ensuring that there was voter registration available to them during those times. And there were also times where we had an opportunity to organize and plan those protests and rallies to encourage those young people to take the passion that they have around social and racial injustices happening within this country and take that pain and really turn it around at the polls. And we saw during that exact time, those same young people stood in line for 6, 7, and 8 hours, some even 12, all across the state of Georgia. And we ended up seeing that That was the largest Georgia primary rate that we have ever seen in the history of this state. And so I am very hopeful that young people will show up to the polls on November the 3rd. I know that young people who have been organizing around different issues have been also working hard in this space. But at Black Youth Vote, beyond just ensuring that they're registered to vote or they're showing up to the polls, through partnerships with organizations like Rise Free, of course, the New Georgia Project, the People's Agenda, we've been able to train over 200 Black college students in the state of Georgia and pay them $200 to go through that training to become poll monitors. So during this time, they were trained and taught of course, a surface training on how to become a poll monitor, how to become an election protection monitor, how to continue to work with these organizations beyond the training and beyond election day. Right now, I think it's a very critical time for us to support young people in what they're fighting for and why they're outside in the middle of a pandemic. And it really all goes back to the ballot box. For years, people have been asking young people or telling young people, should I say, vote like your life depends on it. And a few days ago, we really learned that we actually do have to vote like our life depends on it, because it does, especially as a person of color. When you have public officials and leadership who refuse to condemn racial injustice in communities of color, whether that's Black communities or Latinx communities or even anti-Semitism. So I believe that young people are going to show up to the polls. But another thing that we've been trying to really encourage them to do is take it a step further. A lot of their pushback when it comes to the policy process is the fact that young people don't have hope in the policy process, right? They don't believe in their elected officials anymore. And when they tell us these things, the first thing we'll try to do is condemn them, but instead we really approach them from a space of understanding, where we say, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but do you realize that, and I use the city of Atlanta as an example all the time. I can't use DeKalb County, we're a great county. But when I use the city of Atlanta all the time, and I say, right now, a few months ago, the city of Atlanta had an opportunity to defund the police. And there were people who look like us in these positions of power. And you have elected officials in that particular city that have been in their same position as city council members since 1996. I was born in 1997. So for 23 years, these people have held these positions of power. And so what does that tell you, right? They had a choice and they didn't make that choice. You were out there fighting, but do you see how important showing up at local elections is? Right? When we talk about Breonna Taylor, we talk about George Floyd, we talk about Ahmaud Arbery. Do you see how important a district attorney is? Do you see that a mayor has the authority to choose who the police chief is? I think right now during this time, we have so many examples in which we can show young people on why it's important for them to show up to the polls and vote. I don't believe that we won't see a problem from them this election. I pray we won't. They seem energized enough for me. I've even seen more young people tuning into the presidential debate than I've seen before, but this is also my second presidential election. But I'm just enthusiastic. Those numbers do frighten me, but I'm not scared in 2020. I know we're going to do what's right. I know we're going to show up to the polls. And with the work that every organization on this call has been doing throughout the course of the next few months, in less than 35 days, I know we won't be disappointed.
So Mary Pat, the drop off or now the pickup and turnout for this very important group, right? Is it based on the message, the messenger, or the method of outreach?
I do believe that it is the messenger. During the People's Agenda and Black Youth Vote had an opportunity to do an interview with ABC during the DNC. We are a nonpartisan organization, but we did do an interview during the DNC. And during that interview, they asked us if you could tell anything to any of the candidates, what would it be? And it would be speaking to those at the margins Recently, I called Mrs. Butler about a very viral video happening entitled "Get Your Booty to the Polls." And while it might shock others, you know, this is a video that's targeting voters no one thinks about, right? And so right now we are in a critical time and moment where every vote counts and we can't leave any vote on the table. And so Get Your Booty to the Polls is probably a video that would motivate 100,000 out of the 800,000 that didn't vote in 2018. And so I think that it is the message. I think oftentimes it is the messenger. And so I'm very, proud of organizations like the People's Agenda New Georgia Project, where they are constantly allowing young people an opportunity to organize and mobilize and come up with these amazing ideas to reach these voters. But we have to see the same thing from a lot of these campaigns. We have to see the same things in even some of our elected officials' offices. Again, sometimes people, their race, their class, even their education level, right? I mean, Joe Biden can not only just have Black people who attended HBCUs, right, a part of his campaign team. With that, we have a sense of privilege in even having an opportunity to get an education. We need people at the margins speaking to people at the margins, because those are going to be the only people to get them to the polls. And so, yes, I'm happy that Cardi B is on a Zoom call with Joe Biden to get out the vote, but we're going to need more than that. And not just Joe Biden, any candidate. Again, these are nonpartisan organizations, but we're going to need way more than that in order to mobilize young people. And so we need more, you know, striking ideas like giving out the new Air Jordans and giving students $200 stipends to learn how to become election protection monitors on election day, because that's what's going to push them. And allowing other young people within your organizations the space and opportunity to lead and develop these ideas.
You know, even the president during the debate the other night expressed or talked about the importance of people monitoring the polls for one way or the other, because again, we're a nonpartisan discussion group. So even the president has talked about how important it is to have people at the polls monitoring what happens. But it's very, very, I say that sort of tongue in cheek, but I think it's very important. Now you mentioned people at the margins. We've had a couple of questions in the Q&A about felons. Number one, and this is for anyone on the panel, right? So Erica or anyone. Number one, if you're a felon, do you have the right to vote in Georgia? How do you get the right to vote in Georgia? And how do you express that right to, or exercise that right if you do have the right to vote?
Well, in the state of Georgia, you can vote, register to vote, as long as you've paid off all of your fines and fees and are no longer on probation. Ms. Helen can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that is the correct answer. They can vote. I think it's also important statistic to know that 1 in 6 African-American people in the United States of America have lost their right to vote due to a felony, while 1 in 56 Caucasian individuals in the state of Georgia have lost that's a big difference, have lost their right to vote due to having a felony.
So are the rights automatically restored, or do you have to go through a process, anyone? Erica, I guess
you have to re-register to vote once you have completed your entire sentence. As Ms. Pat Hector said, that involves your restitution, fines, and incarceration.
So what evidence do you take with you? Oh, I see Ms. Ufat has something wants to add to that. But is there, what sort of evidence do you need to take with you that you've cleared all hurdles, so to speak? I shouldn't say hurdles, but you satisfied all the conditions?
You're signing that oath, and once you sign that oath, it does go through a monthly check of the felon database, the Department of Corrections database. And if it comes up a match again, you'll be removed again, and you have information that you can come in and state that you are no longer a felon. And so you are no longer in felony status. So it does, before they remove you from the rolls again, you do have a cure process. So for to make sure that your name remains on the rolls.
So if you're on probation, though, you're still not eligible to that. You have to clear probation?
Correct.
Okay.
Erica,
so
didn't the Secretary of State just issue a different ruling that you don't have to satisfy your fees and restitution? It's your fines and your sentence, but not the fees and the restitution part. And the best way for people to really get to know whether they have completed everything is to get a certificate from your Department of Community Service, so that you really aren't have a problem with registering to vote again. So we want to make sure people, and it's confusing, believe me. Because the rules change in between, and so we want to make sure people do exercise that right to vote.
So break that down. What that means, Helen, 'cause that was a little confusing even to me. So what does that mean?
Can I take a crack at it?
Sure.
Oh,
Do you
absolutely.
mind?
No.
You don't mind? Okay. Basically, there's all kinds of ways that courts get money for people who are involved with the justice system. And so if your fine is a part of your sentence, meaning your sentence isn't over until you pay this money, then you technically are still on paper. But if it's restitution or court fees that is separate from your actual sentence itself, then you can re-register once you're done with the time portion of your probation or parole. So
Gotcha.
if the money is a part of your sentence, like you got 5 years and you have to and there's money involved, until you're completely done and completely paid that back, it's a part of your sentence, you can't register to vote. But if you had to pay court fees or some filing fees or some restitution and it's separate from your sentence, you can register to vote as soon as you're done with your time, the time piece of your probation or parole.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And for all of our viewers out here, if there's anything that's confusing or you're not quite sure about, we are broadcasting or streaming on the YouTube. And so you can go back, rewind, watch that. And you can always submit questions, any follow-up questions to the Social Action Committee for
call Ms. Hamilton. Call Ms. Hamilton in DeKalb County.
There you go. There you go. And I didn't say anything about the ruling because we're still letting our legal department look at it because there's some conflicting information, but we're going to let our legal department look at it. So, yes.
So we're going to go into the rapid, because it's 8:27, so we're going to go into a sort of a rapid cycle real quick, just so we can just take a minute. There are a couple of questions I want to make sure we answered. There was a question asking about where's their information on the candidates and their platforms. The League of Women Voters generally publishes something, and each candidate has an option to complete that information there. So you can do that. You can also check out organizations like the People's Agenda and New Georgia Project. They will often issue scorecards, as well many trade organizations like Georgia Association of Educators or a lot of other groups that issue scorecards around specific issues. So there's that. Ms. Hamilton, there were a couple of questions about absentee ballots. If people requested them, if they request them and they don't receive it, what are their options for voting to make sure they don't want to get sued for double counting? What are their options if I request my ballot and I don't receive it?
If you request your ballot and don't receive it, contact our office. We'll tell you how to cancel that ballot and we can reissue you a new ballot, or you can go to your advanced voting location and they'll cancel that ballot and allow, if it hasn't been received by our office, and allow you to vote on the voting equipment, or on election day, the same procedures follow.
Okay, good deal.
Fred, there's also a new ballot tracker called Ballot Track that people can track their ballot status. They can also look at my voter page to see their status of whether it was received, when it was issued, received, and accepted. So it's a new thing you sign up for called Ballot Track. You could get an alert on your phone via email or via text.
Great, thank you.
And I know because I tried it out, but I'll put it in the chat.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And I think we can probably send it around to everyone who's registered. We can include some links with that. So if we can, we'll send that out. There's one question that someone's already submitted their ballot and it was accepted. They want to know if there's a way to check and make sure that the selections they intended to make were made. Is there a way to do that?
Once that ballot is accepted by our office, it's sealed until we have legal right to open that ballot. And once it's taken away, Once you've put that ballot in the mail and it's been received by our office by law, it is your vote. Just like on election day, once you put it into the scanner and it drops into the scanner, your ballot is cast.
Fantastic. And so thank you all very much. Thank you to our fantastic group of panelists. You all were absolutely amazing, phenomenal, and you embraced this opportunity to dispense information, and we appreciate it and we thank you. To everyone out there in our listening audience, again, you know that we have fantastic groups here. We have the Coalition for the People's Agenda, we have the New Georgia Project, we have Black Youth Vote represented here, and of course we have the
a little long.
we have the wonderful Delta Sigma Theta Decatur Alumni Chapter.
Give me like
Decatur Alumni Chapter represented here. Hang on a second. There we go. Represented here, and I am actually going to now turn it back over to our host, the National Social Action Co-Chair for the fantastic Crimson and Cream, Miss Rhonda Briggins.
All right, what a great panel. Oh my goodness. And Fred Hicks, you were an exceptional moderator tonight. I love how you had the panelists going back and forth and really engaging and following up. So thank you so much for all of everything that you've done tonight to bring this home. DeKalb County, you have everything you need to know for November the 3rd. What an amazing night. So if you have more questions, reach out to us, let us know so we can get those things answered for you. Before we go, I want to thank our sponsors again. We have so many sponsors for tonight. We have Delta Research Education Foundation, NAACP, Delta LDC, People's Agenda, Rose PAC, and the County of DeKalb County. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity again. Our Social Action Committee, Ms. Betty Davis, Waquita Brown, thank you so much. All of our technology support for the day, Sora Cotton, Sora Drake, Sora Baldwin, and Sora Kimbrew. Thank you all for your participation tonight and making sure that everything ran so smoothly. Before we go, I have one little thing I need to do before we close out. Now, Sora Insay said it best. She said, go ahead and get ready. And if you're always ready, you don't have to get ready. It's really what she said. So we need you all to be ready, stay ready, and get ready for the elections on November the 3rd. And so we need you to have a voting plan. You heard that over and over again tonight. You need a voting plan. You need to vote early. We've talked about that tonight. And then I want to say we need to let us put 5 on it. Remember that I got 5 on it? And so you all need to make sure you put 5 on it. And what does that mean? You need to put 5 on it because you need to make sure you go and find 5 people. You saw the numbers here tonight, and make sure that those 5 people will be followed from start to finish with their voter registration all the way to the polls, that you call, you check on them, you take them, you push them, you drag them, but make sure on November the 3rd that they get to the polls. We need you to dedicate yourself to 5 people. And because we've had so many people to die for this great right that we have to vote. I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and my whole life I've always wanted to be a part of the civil rights movement. I wanted to be a part of change in this country and our great history, because I know the shoulders in which we stand. I lived in Selma, Alabama, so you really can't talk to me about voting rights, because every time I saw that Edmunds Pettus Bridge, it reminded me of all of the folks who have marched over that bridge for our right to vote. Congressman Lewis just passed recently, and he always talked about some good trouble. I need for y'all to go and get in some real good trouble on November the 3rd. And that good trouble is you voting. My soror Amelia Boyton dedicated her life. When you see all of the films of Selma, you see her falling to the ground and being trampled on. And so we had a lot of people who died and dedicated for this right to vote. And I know the young people say that's old school, but sometimes you need some old school to get to some new school, because a lot of folks died for that right. So we need you all to exercise your right. And then they've extended the census. We need to make sure that we are being counted around the census. All of these programs and everything you do around voting, you need some money. And the money that comes to your community comes through you being counted for the census. So we need you to fill out your census forms. If you look at the return rate for Georgia, it's really low. So if you are from rural areas, call your folks, call your friends, call your auntie, your grandma, call everybody and make sure they filled out the census form. They've made it so easy for you. You can just pick up the phone and send that information in. So we need for you to do that. And then more importantly, it's all about election protection this year. We've talked about that. We need to make sure that we're going to protect our right to vote. And let me tell you, we're in the streets every day. We say no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. And let me tell you, if they take our vote, it will be no peace. And so we are going to fight to the end. We're going to do all that we can. We're begging you not to leave the polls on election day. So if you need a sandwich, you need your medication, you need to run to the restroom, you just call us because we're going to make sure we help you out. Because we're going to stay at the end. We're going to do all that we can as this collective group. Weren't they fabulous? Weren't they wonderful? This panel, I told you they're going to be off the chain, and they were. They have the information. They have everything that you need for November the 3rd. So I say you are ready to go. We need to vote, and November 3rd is the date to do it. Have a wonderful night tonight. Thank you all for participating. And remember, no justice, no peace, no vote, no peace. Good night.